Illustrated Encyclopedia of Mitochondrial Health and Human Wellbeing.
Hey, and welcome to the Deep Dive. We're jumping straight into something that, well, it affects so many of us, and it's been on a really concerning rise.
Yeah, you mean the prevalence of serious diseases.
Exactly. Just look at the figures between 1980 and, say, 2021. Heart disease. It went from about 11 million to a massive 19.4 million cases.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It is, and cancer more than doubled. We're talking 4.8 million up to nearly 9.9 million.
Incredible numbers.
And then there's diabetes. That shot up from roughly 516,000 to 1.66 million.
So these aren't just slight increases, they're significant trends.
They really are. And these trends, they're not just numbers, are they?
Yeah.
They signal a real need for, well, fresh perspectives on how we tackle these things. Treatment, yes, but maybe even more importantly, prevention.
You're absolutely right. It underscores a critical point. We need to dig deeper. We need to understand what's really driving these diseases and explore strategies that hit the fundamental issues, not just managing symptoms.
And that's exactly what we're setting out to do today. It's by Gabriel Iqbal.
Ah, yes, Gabriel Iqbal, Canadian health scientist.
That's him, award-winning scientist, author, founder of Eureka Academy. He's got a really interesting background. Some folks might know his other work, like Heart Intelligence.
Right. He takes a, shall we say, holistic but science-grounded approach.
Precisely. So our mission, really, for this deep dive is to pull out the core insights from Iqbal's book. His proposals for tackling these huge health challenges by getting right down to the root causes. What starts them?
What's really compelling about Iqbal's work, I think, is how he weaves together existing scientific knowledge with some, well, pretty forward-thinking concepts.
Yeah.
He's really pushing us to look beyond just the surface symptoms and identify the foundational disruptions, the things that actually lead to disease in the first place.
Okay, so let's unpack one of the central pillars of his argument then. He talks about the absolutely critical role of mitochondria.
The powerhouses.
The powerhouses of the cell, exactly. Just a quick reminder for everyone listening, think of mitochondria as these tiny, tiny power plants inside almost every cell in your body.
They're essential. They produce the energy that basically keeps everything running, like little engines converting food into usable power, ATP.
Right, and what Iqbal really emphasizes, and this is key, is that when these mitochondria aren't working correctly, he calls it mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yes, dysfunction.
The impact goes way beyond just feeling a bit tired. He makes a pretty strong case that this dysfunction is a core underlying factor in a whole range of diseases.
A really wide range. Things like metabolic disorders, cancer, diabetes, even neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
So his point is, if we can address the health of these tiny power plants, our mitochondria,
we might be able to impact a lot more than just our energy levels. We might be hitting something fundamental to many chronic diseases.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because the book doesn't just say, hey, mitochondria are important. It actually zeroes in on therapeutic strategies, ways to specifically target and hopefully improve mitochondrial health.
Exactly. So we're moving beyond just symptom management. The idea is potentially restoring proper function at a very, very basic cellular level.
It's like getting to the root of the power outage in the house, not just fiddling with the light switch.
That's a good analogy, yeah. The perspective shifts. Instead of just dealing with the consequences of the breakdown, you're trying to fortify the cell's fundamental ability to work correctly.
Which opens up some really innovative possibilities for treatment, doesn't it?
It certainly does. New avenues to explore. We're tackling something pretty interesting. It's this idea about what might really be underlying a lot of diseases. Right. The idea, which seems to be gaining some traction, is that maybe chronic parasitic infections are playing a much bigger role than we usually think, affecting immunity, gut health,
Inflammation, all the big players in chronic illness.
So our mission today is to kind of unpack that based on these source materials, dig into the main arguments.
Let's do it.
Okay, so Gabriel's book, it puts forward this pretty striking thesis, doesn't it? That diseases are increasing, maybe exponentially, and parasites are the root cause.
That's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The argument presented is that these persistent infections, they can set off a whole chain reaction in the body.
A chain reaction, how? What are the mechanisms they talk about?
Well, the excerpts really focus on a few key things. First, how parasites can kind of interfere with our immune system, maybe suppress it or misdirect it.
Right.
Then there's the gut health aspect that can seriously disrupt the microbiome, damage the gut lining. All things we now know are, super important for overall health.
Right. The gut connection is huge these days.
Exactly. And all this disruption, this immune interference, it often leads to chronic inflammation. And we know inflammation is a fundamental driver behind so many diseases.
Makes sense. It's like a cascade. And the source material actually names names, right? Specific parasites.
It does. Toxoplasma gondii gets a mention.
Yeah.
And also various types of helminths, worms.
Worms, okay. And what sort of conditions are being linked even tentatively to these parasites in the book?
It's quite a range, actually. The excerpts touch on connections to neuropsychiatric disorders.
Really? Like mood or cognitive issues?
The suggestion seems to be there.
Yeah.
Also malnutrition, which makes sense if parasites are stealing nutrients and even potentially cancer. There's a reference to research by Hotez and others in that context.
Wow. Neuropsychiatric stuff and cancer? Those are heavy hitters.
They are. Okay, so the book talks about some specific substances that might be key players here. And two that come up quite prominently are ivermectin and fenbendazole.
Right. Now, most people, if they've heard of these, know them as anti-parasitic drugs.
Yeah, for treating worms and things like that in animals and sometimes humans.
That's their established role, definitely. But what Iqbal brings to the forefront is this emerging body of research suggesting they might have significant effects elsewhere.
Like where?
Particularly in the context of cancer, potentially, and also other diseases linked to metabolic issues. The book delves into the mechanisms, how they might interfere with cancer cell growth, maybe modulate our immune responses, or even help address metabolic imbalances seen in diabetes, or issues in neurons or heart tissue.
So while we know them for parasites, Iqbal is highlighting this potential for a much broader impact based on how they interact with our cells.
Precisely, looking beyond the primary function.
Now, with ivermectin specifically, it's worth just pausing for a second. I mean, the discovery of this drug was huge. It actually won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine back in 2015.
That's right, awarded to Dr. Satoshi Mura and Dr. William Campbell. That's a massive validation of its importance, at least for its original uses.
Absolutely. A Nobel Prize isn't handed out lightly.
And that recognition extends further. The World Health Organization, the WHO, includes ivermectin on its list of essential medicines.
Essential medicines, okay.
Which really underscores its fundamental role in treating certain widespread parasitic diseases globally. It does make you think, though, about the potential of well-established drugs. Could there be more to them?
And just to give a sense of its use, I mean, even here in the US, back in 2022, ivermectin was the 314th most commonly prescribed medication, something like that, over 200,000 prescriptions.
So it's definitely in circulation.
It is, and it's available on its own or sometimes combined with other drugs like albendazole or, interestingly, fenbendazole, which, as you said, Iqbal also discusses.
Right, so we're talking about substances that are already out there, already in use, potentially having these broader applications that maybe we haven't fully explored or appreciated.
It's fascinating, this idea that a molecule designed for one thing might interact with our cells in multiple ways, leading to unexpected, maybe beneficial effects.
It really is, and Iqbal's work encourages that kind of exploration, looking at these alternative pathways, the broader cellular impact.
Okay, so moving on from those two. Another compound that Iqbal discusses, specifically in relation to boosting mitochondrial health, is methylene blue, often just called MB.
Methylene blue, yes.
Now, this is something people might vaguely remember from, high school chemistry as a blue dye, or maybe as an antiseptic.
That's its history, absolutely. Used as a stain in labs, and it has antimicrobial properties. But what's gaining traction now, and what Iqbal highlights, is its potential to actually improve how our mitochondria function.
How does it do that?
Well, the book explains that methylene blue can act as an electron donor within the mitochondria.
Okay, let's break that down a bit for everyone. What does being an electron donor mean there? And why does it matter for the mitochondria?
Good question. So essentially, it helps the electron transport chain work better. This is that crucial series of steps inside the mitochondria where electrons get passed along like a tiny bucket brigade. And this process ultimately drives the production of ATP. That's the main energy molecule our cells use for, almost everything.
The energy currency.
Exactly.
Our body is made up of trillions of cells. They all require energy to function. This energy is created within our cells, in the mitochondria. Here, food is converted into chemical energy called ATP. ATP is released by the mitochondria so cells can use it. Mitochondria consist of two membranes, an outer membrane, separating it from the cytosol, and an inner membrane, surrounding the so-called matrix. The area between these membranes is called the intermembrane space. ATP is generated at the inner membrane of mitochondria by an efficient mechanism called oxidative phosphorylation, involving several membrane protein complexes. Nutrients provide high-energy electrons in the form of NADH, which are used by the protein complexes to pump protons from the matrix to the intermembrane space. This continuous pumping creates a proton gradient, where the positively charged protons are attracted to the more negative matrix. When the protons re-enter the matrix through the ATP synthase protein complex, they catalyze the production of ATP.
So, by donating electrons at the right place, methylene blue can help this whole chain run more smoothly, more efficiently, potentially boosting ATP production, improving cellular energy, supporting metabolic function.
So it's like giving the cell's energy production line a bit of a jump start, maybe, if it's struggling.
That's a really good way to put it. A jump start, or maybe making it run more efficiently. And the potential benefits might not stop there.
Oh.
Iqbal also notes how MB might enhance glycolysis. That's another way cells make energy from glucose, especially when oxygen is maybe a bit low.
Right.
And methylene blue seems to improve oxygen availability within the cell, which helps with that too. Plus, it acts as an antioxidant.
Ah, so it protects the cell too.
Yes, it can help neutralize those damaging free radicals, those unstable molecules that can harm cell structures, including the mitochondria themselves, which are quite sensitive.
So it sounds like it's doing a few different things then. Boosting energy production, helping with glucose use, and protecting against damage.
It seems to have this sort of multi-pronged effect at the cellular level, which is why the book presents it as this really versatile potential therapeutic agent.
With applications where?
Well, the book suggests possibilities across a spectrum from neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, maybe heart problems, metabolic disorders like diabetes, and even potentially in supporting cancer therapies.
Wow, so it's about harnessing these fundamental biochemical actions to support cell health across different body systems.
That's the core idea, leveraging its properties to bolster the resilience and function of our cells at that very basic level. And that could have really far-reaching implications for health.
Okay. Now, shifting gears slightly, but still related to cellular health. Another big concept in Iqbal's book is this idea of alkalization, maintaining an alkaline environment.
Yes, pH balance.
This topic comes up a fair bit in general health discussions, doesn't it? How does the book frame it?
Iqbal discusses the importance of keeping a slightly alkaline environment within the body for cells to function optimally. The book lays out the reasoning, suggesting that if the internal environment becomes too acidic, it can actually hinder cellular processes. It might even contribute to the development or progression of disease. It's a bit like how plants need the right soil pH to thrive. Our cells also have their preferred environment.
And this idea, it connects directly to the work of Dr. Otto Warburg, doesn't it? The Nobel Prize winner.
Absolutely. Iqbal draws that line very clearly. Warburg, who won his Nobel back in 1931 for work on respiratory enzymes.
Often called the father of oncology.
Right. He's famous for identifying the Warburg effect. That's the observation that cancer cells seem to prefer generating energy through glycolysis, that less efficient sugar-burning pathway, even when there's plenty of oxygen around, which is weird.
Yeah, normal cells usually switch to the much more efficient mitochondrial respiration when oxygen is available. So that discovery was pretty paradigm shifting at the time, right?
Yeah.
Challenged the norms.
It really did. Made scientists rethink cancer metabolism entirely. And Warburg took it a step further. He hypothesized that the root cause of cancer might actually be damage or dysfunction in mitochondrial respiration itself.
Back to the mitochondria again.
Exactly, that the damage to the main power plant forces the cell to rely on this less efficient backup generator. And this metabolic shift, he thought, was fundamental to cancer development.
And as Iqbal presents it in the book, one of Warburg's really striking findings or claims was that cancer cells cannot survive in an alkaline environment.
It's a very bold statement, and it highlights the potential significance of pH at the cellular level, according to Warburg's research interpreted by Iqbal.
But there's a crucial caveat here, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely critical. And the book emphasizes this too. Our body tightly regulates its overall pH within a very narrow, slightly alkaline range, usually between 7.35 and 7.45.
That range is vital for survival, basically.
Yeah, totally. Significant shifts either way, too acidic or too alkaline, are dangerous. So any strategies aiming to influence body pH, whether it's diet or supplements, they need to be approached really cautiously, ideally under medical guidance. It's definitely not about trying to make drastic changes to your overall body pH. It's likely more about the microenvironment around cells. It's complex.
Right. It's about balance and caution. Very important point. So, okay, the book brings together these different elements: mitochondrial health, repurposed drugs like ivermectin and fenbendazole, methylene blue, the concept of alkalization. How does Iqbal suggest putting these pieces together, practically speaking?
That's where he talks about integrated treatment protocols. The idea isn't to use these things in isolation necessarily, but rather to see them as potentially interconnected parts of a more comprehensive, a more holistic approach, both for prevention and treatment.
So combining strategies.
Yes. The book offers some practical frameworks for how these might be integrated, but always stressing the need for a personalized, patient-centered approach. Meaning you have to consider the individual, their specific genetics, their environmental exposures, their lifestyle. All of that matters when tailoring any kind of health plan. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all prescription.
Moving away from that standardized model.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah, and also the crucial importance of supporting the immune system. Immunotherapy, immune-enhancing agents, how they fit into maintaining health and fighting disease.
Right, the immune system is key.
And there's even discussion of natural detoxification protocols, helping the body clear out unwanted substances and restore its natural balance. It really paints a picture of a multifaceted strategy for well-being.
It sounds quite comprehensive. So, who is this book really aimed at? Who would get the most out of it?
Well, I think Iqbal has aimed it pretty broadly, actually. It would definitely be valuable for health professionals, doctors, researchers looking for new perspectives or directions in disease treatment, but also for individuals who are just really interested in the science behind health. People focused on metabolic diseases, cancer, neurodegenerative conditions, or anyone exploring, science-backed alternative or complementary therapies.
So anyone who wants to understand the deeper mechanisms.
Pretty much. Anyone wanting to get beyond the surface level and understand potential new avenues for intervention.
And to help make these, let's face it, sometimes complex scientific ideas a bit easier to grasp, the book uses things like infographics, tables, graphs.
Yes, that's a really helpful feature. It helps break down the intricate data and concepts, making them more accessible. Whether you're an expert in the field or just a scientifically curious reader, those visuals definitely help.
Good. We've covered some really fascinating ground, these interconnected themes.
Yeah, it all seems to loop back.
It does. The absolute significance of mitochondrial health.
The cell's engine.
The intriguing potential of repurposing known drugs like ivermectin and fenbendazole.
Looking beyond their initial use.
The energy-boosting and protective qualities of methylene blue.
That multitasker.
And this concept of fostering a healthy, slightly alkaline cellular environment may be linked back to Warburg, all presented as key strategies.
And the common thread is tackling prevalent diseases by addressing what Iqbal sees as their root causes.
Yeah. It's a perspective that really encourages us to look beyond just managing symptoms, doesn't it?
It really does. It prompts consideration of these fundamental biological processes that, when they get disrupted, might contribute to so many different conditions. It's about focusing on the underlying imbalances and how we might potentially restore them.
It certainly gives you a lot to think about. Makes you wonder, how much could our whole approach to health, to prevention and treatment evolve if we really put the focus on optimizing cellular health at this fundamental level.
It's a paradigm shift perspective, for sure.
Definitely encourages you to dig deeper into these ideas.
I mean, if you really think about it, modern medicine it's actually incredible at acute care. Like if you shatter your femur or you tear an artery, the hospital is exactly where you want to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the precision they have for trauma is just staggering.
Right. But then you look at the other side of the coin. Against these slow burn, preventable chronic illnesses that are basically, sweeping the globe right now. It feels like the traditional diagnostic model is just, well, it's fundamentally broken.
Yeah, it really struggles. We're looking at this medical landscape that, frankly, has a hard time explaining why systemic metabolic diseases are just on this staggering, continuous rise.
Which is crazy when you consider how advanced our tools are.
It is, but classical medicine is built on a very compartmentalized model.
Mhm.
So you go to a cardiologist for your heart, a neurologist for your brain, an endocrinologist for your hormones.
Right. Highly specialized.
Exactly. And that works brilliantly for localized acute issues. But when you're dealing with pervasive whole-body decline, looking at isolated organs often misses the underlying current connecting them all.
Because the traditional tools are almost too specialized?
Yeah, they can sometimes fail to capture the broader foundational breakdown that's happening at the microscopic level.
And that structural gap, that blind spot in how we view illness, is really the entire mission of today's deep dive. We're unpacking excerpts from this fascinating text, the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Mitochondrial Health and Human Wellbeing by the Canadian health scientist Gabriel Iqbal.
It's an incredibly ambitious piece of work for sure.
It really is. And the framework here is basically an attempt to bypass the macro symptoms for you. So ignoring the high blood pressure, the joint pain, the brain fog, and trying to address disease right at the cellular root.
Which is a massive paradigm shift.
Totally. The encyclopedia is billed as this A to Z roadmap of biochemistry and energy production. It pulls together classical medical understanding, but mixes it with some emerging and, as we'll get into, heavily debated biochemical science.
Right. And to really grasp what Gabriel Iqbal is arguing here, we first have to understand the specific lens he uses to look at the human body.
Which is not your typical medical lens.
No, not at all. He's an award-winning scientist, a humanitarian, the founder of Eureka Academy in Canada. But the key to unlocking his whole framework is his academic background.
Right, back in the UT.
Yeah, in the early 1990s, he studied biology with a strict focus on human evolution at the University of Leeds. And specifically, he studied under Dr. McNeill Alexander.
Who is like one of the eminent biologists in the world.
Exactly. So he has this deeply evolutionary and biological perspective on health.
And that matters because an evolutionary biologist is going to look at, say, a liver cell very differently than a traditional pathologist would.
Oh, fundamentally differently. A pathologist is trained to look for disease or structural damage in the tissue, right?
Just looking for what's broken.
Yes. But an evolutionary biologist is looking at how that cell adapted to survive its environment over millions of years.
That's such a crucial distinction. It changes everything about how you treat the issue.
It really does. When you look at the body through an evolutionary lens, you don't view the human form as this machine with parts that just randomly wear out or break down for no reason.
Right.
You view it as a complex, highly evolved ecosystem. And at the absolute center of that ecosystem are the mitochondria.
The microscopic power plants inside our cells.
The very same. They're responsible for producing adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, which is, the chemical energy currency of life.
And the text argues that mitochondrial dysfunction is essentially the foundational factor in major modern conditions. We're talking cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration.
Basically, if the power plant fails, the whole city goes dark.
Exactly. But applying that evolutionary lens Iqbal has, the text suggests these power plants don't just break by accident.
No, they don't, because mitochondria actually have their own DNA.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. 1 billion years ago, they were likely independent, free-living bacteria that got engulfed by larger cells. And they actually still act like it. They sense threats.
Right, they have a mind of their own, sort of.
Kind of, yeah. When they detect a toxic environment, they don't just malfunction. They deliberately shut down energy production.
As a defense mechanism.
Yes, an ancient evolutionary defense mechanism. They essentially go into survival mode.
And that concept, I think it's often referred to in broader biochemistry as the cell danger response, right?
Spot on. The cell danger response.
It totally shifts the entire paradigm of treatment. Because if mitochondrial shutdown is the actual root of a disease like diabetes, then treating the specific organ-level symptom without addressing the energy deficit is, well, it's fundamentally incomplete.
You're just treating the body's defense mechanism rather than removing the threat that triggered it in the first place?
Let me put a working analogy to this for the listener because I think it helps ground it. Traditional symptom management often feels to me like painting over rust on the undercarriage of a car.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. Like you can use a medication to artificially lower a blood sugar number, or you take a pill to suppress an inflammatory marker, and sure, the car looks fine for a few months.
But the rust is still there.
Exactly. The structural integrity is quietly being eaten away underneath because the oxidative stress hasn't stopped. So Iqbal's focus on restoring cellular energy production, it's essentially an attempt to actually rust-proof the body's engine. Right.
That visual works perfectly because rust is quite literally oxidation.
Right. Chemical rust.
When the mitochondria are under stress, they produce excessive reactive oxygen species. That is the biological equivalent of rust, just corroding your cellular machinery.
So if the engine is still sputtering and oxidizing,
The rust will inevitably return. It usually manifests as a completely different symptom or some new chronic diagnosis.
so the goal here is metabolic resilience.
Yes, making sure the engine is robust enough to handle the biochemical stresses of modern life without corroding.
Okay, so if the engine rusts because of a toxic environment, we need to figure out what creates that environment, and more importantly, how to change it. Because, we can't just pour premium gasoline into our ears and hope for the best.
Sadly, no, we can't.
So the text points directly to the specific chemical environment of our cells, and it leans heavily on this concept of alkalization, which brings up the research of Nobel laureate Dr. Otto Warburg.
Dr. Warburg's research is practically a cornerstone of this text. We're talking early 20th century here. He explored this deep relationship between cellular acidity, oxygen utilization, and disease.
What did he find?
Well, he observed that abnormal cells, specifically cancer cells, exhibit a really bizarre metabolic shift. Even when they have plenty of oxygen available to them, they just stop using their mitochondria for efficient aerobic respiration.
Which is what they're supposed to do.
Right. Instead, they revert to this really primitive form of energy production, which is fermenting glucose.
And a major byproduct of that glucose fermentation is lactic acid, right?
Exactly. So these abnormal cells are quite literally spewing out acid.
So they're creating this highly acidic, low oxygen microenvironment around themselves?
Yep. An environment where they thrive, but healthy, normal cells just cannot survive.
And the Encyclopedia uses this mechanism to argue that cellular acidity is a massive driver of chronic illness across the board, not just cancer.
Because it affects everything. Enzymes, proteins, the delicate mitochondrial machinery that actually produces the ATP, they are all incredibly sensitive to pH levels.
Right.
Think of an enzyme like a highly specific key that's designed to fit a specific lock.
Right.
If the cellular environment becomes too acidic, the actual protein structure of that enzyme physically changes shape.
It denatures.
It denatures, yes.
Yes.
So the key no longer fits the lock. The biochemical reactions just stall out.
So alkalization is really about buffering that acid to restore the optimal operating conditions so your mitochondria can do their job.
Precisely.
And the book offers a lot of dietary and supplemental strategies to support this pH balance. It talks about consuming mineral-rich, alkalizing inputs, things heavy in magnesium and potassium to give the body those chemical buffers.
You're actively managing the soil so the plant can actually grow.
Right. But beyond just managing the soil, the text gets incredibly specific about tools to directly repair the machinery itself. And I think the section on methylene blue is where the biochemistry takes a really fascinating turn.
Oh, methylene blue is so interesting. It's presented here as a highly targeted mitochondrial support agent.
How does it actually work?
To understand it, you have to look closely at how the mitochondrion generates power. Inside it, there's this thing called an electron transport chain. You can visualize it as a microscopic, high-voltage power line made up of 4 distinct protein complexes.
Okay, a microscopic power line.
Right. And electrons are passed down this line. The resulting current is what the cell actually uses to manufacture ATP.
So under normal conditions, the current flows cleanly.
Perfectly cleanly.
But in a state of chronic illness or high oxidative stress or severe acidity like we just talked about, the insulation on that power line starts to degrade.
Exactly. The protein complexes become damaged, the electron starts arcing and sparking out of the chain.
And those stray electrons are free radicals.
Yes, and they burn the surrounding cellular tissue. They cause massive oxidative damage, and at the same time, actual energy production just plummets.
So where does methylene blue fit in? Because when I was reading this, it honestly sounded like jumper cables for a dead cellular battery.
That is actually the perfect way to describe it. Methylene blue has a very unique molecular structure. It allows it to act as an artificial electron carrier.
So it's basically a localized conductive patch for a broken power line.
Right. If complex 1 or complex 3 in the transport chain is damaged, methylene blue can literally accept an electron, bypass the broken machinery entirely, and deliver that electron directly to where it needs to go to keep the current flowing.
Wow. So it restores the chain.
It restores the chain, and simultaneously, it neutralizes those arcing rogue electrons we talked about,
Yeah.
which dramatically reduces the oxidative stress.
It's literally bridging the gap in a broken biochemical circuit. That's wild. And that explains why the text explores methylene blue's potential applications in neurodegenerative and cardiovascular conditions.
Because the brain and the heart are the most energy-demanding organs in the human body.
Right. They require massive uninterrupted amounts of ATP.
They do. When the power line breaks down, the neurological and cardiovascular systems are the first to experience rolling blackouts.
So by acting as an alternative electron carrier, methylene blue theoretically bypasses those metabolic blockades that are driving these severe diseases.
It's an attempt to jumpstart the specific biochemical process that keeps the cell alive, rather than simply, masking a downstream symptom.
But patching the power line is only a temporary fix if something is actively tearing the infrastructure down, right?
Exactly. Which brings us to a very significant and highly debated section of the text.
Right. The role of hidden parasites and the use of repurposed therapies.
Yes.
Now, before we explore the biology here, I need to draw a very hard line in the sand regarding our role in this discussion for you, the listener.
We definitely need to make this clear.
We are about to unpack some highly controversial medical treatments, and we are maintaining strict neutrality here. We are not taking sides.
Not at all.
We are absolutely not endorsing the medical use of these controversial drugs for the complex conditions we're about to discuss. Our only mission today is to impartially analyze the biological claims and the biochemical pathways exactly as they are presented in Gabriel Iqbal's source material.
That context is vital. We are functioning strictly as impartial guides to the text here.
Exactly. So keeping that in mind, what is the Encyclopedia's core argument regarding parasites?
The text makes a really strong argument that chronic, often undetected parasitic infections are a massive, totally overlooked driver of systemic illness.
It essentially links these persistent infections to severe immune disruption, profound gut imbalance, cascading systemic inflammation, and even hypersensitive allergic responses.
Because think about it, the gut is where a massive portion of the human immune system is centralized.
Right.
So if the gut is harboring a chronic parasitic burden, your immune system is essentially locked in a perpetual state of active warfare.
It's constantly deploying inflammatory cytokines, which are these signaling proteins that basically tell the body to fight.
But those cytokines cause incredible collateral damage to the host's own tissues over time.
It's like constantly spraying salt water on the car's engine. The resulting oxidative stress accelerates the rust we talked about earlier and directly damages the healthy mitochondria.
And the energy demand of sustaining that chronic, low-grade immune battle, it's immense. It completely drains the body's ATP reserves while simultaneously creating that acidic, high oxidative stress environment.
So it's a double whammy.
It really is. And this is the foundation upon which the Encyclopedia introduces ivermectin and fenbendazole.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. It presents these established antiparasitic therapies as complementary tools for addressing modern chronic diseases.
The text is actually very careful to provide the global and historical context for these medications, too. It highlights that Dr. Satoshi Mura and Dr. William Campbell were awarded the 2015 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discovery of ivermectin.
Right. It's not some obscure compound.
No, it notes that the World Health Organization classifies ivermectin as an essential medicine. And it points out that in 2022, it ranked among the most widely dispensed medications in the United States.
So the Encyclopedia is exploring emerging research regarding their secondary effects on cellular metabolism, immune support, and specifically the inhibition of abnormal cell growth.
But I have to stop the progression here, because I have to play devil's advocate for the listener.
Please do.
Applying a livestock dewormer or a broad-spectrum antiparasitic to treat something like metabolic syndrome or neurodegeneration, I mean, that sounds like a massive logical leap.
It sounds completely counterintuitive on the surface.
It does. How does the text biologically bridge that gap? Like, how does killing a gut parasite actually fix a broken, rusted mitochondrion in the liver or the brain?
Well, the text doesn't frame these therapies as magic bullets that directly heal a damaged cell. That's not the claim.
Okay, so what is the link?
The logical bridge relies entirely on the concept of burden reduction.
Burden reduction.
Yes. If you use a targeted antiparasitic therapy, you are clearing that parasitic load. Once the pathogen is removed, that hyperactive immune response we just talked about finally downregulates.
The constant flood of inflammatory cytokines just stops.
Exactly. And when the systemic inflammation drops, the cellular environment naturally becomes less acidic. The oxidative stress plummets.
Ah, I see.
And the mitochondria finally have the biological breathing room to repair their own power lines and resume normal ATP production.
So it removes the blockade. The drug doesn't actually heal the cell. The drug removes the biological stressor, so the cell can utilize its own evolutionary mechanisms to heal itself.
Exactly. But to be fair, the text also delves into some fascinating secondary mechanisms. Specifically, how these repurposed drugs might physically inhibit abnormal cell growth.
Right, the cancer cell connection.
Yes. And this involves something called microtubule inhibition.
What are microtubules?
When any cell divides and replicates, it relies on this structural scaffolding made of proteins called tubulin. These tubulin proteins polymerize, they link together to form microtubules. You can think of them as molecular highways that literally pull the dividing cell apart.
So you need them for cell division.
You absolutely need them. According to the research cited in the text, certain antiparasitics like fenbendazole bind specifically to this tubulin.
And that prevents the microtubules from forming.
Yes, it stops the scaffolding from being built.
Wow. So if the cell can't build the scaffolding, it physically cannot divide. The replication process just halts entirely.
Exactly. And the encyclopedia also touches on how these therapies might interact with cellular metabolism by inhibiting glucose uptake.
Oh, wait. If we remember Dr. Warburg's work from earlier, abnormal cells rely entirely on fermenting massive amounts of glucose to survive, right?
They do. So if a compound can block that glucose uptake while simultaneously destroying the cell's structural scaffolding,
It is effectively starving the abnormal cell of its fuel source while preventing it from spreading.
exactly. It is a really multifaceted approach that targets the specific metabolic vulnerabilities of abnormal cells.
Which ties directly back to the overarching philosophy of the entire text. You have to address the biochemical environment and the microscopic pathways rather than just surgically removing the resulting mass or, medicating the localized pain.
Right, fix the root, not the symptom.
We have covered some incredible biological ground here today. I mean, moving from evolutionary adaptations and Nobel Prize-winning discoveries all the way to pH buffering and repairing molecular power lines.
It's a dense amount of science for sure.
It really is. But I think what makes this source material truly distinct is how it visualizes all this dense microscopic biochemistry for the reader.
The visuals are key.
They really are. The encyclopedia utilizes over 100 detailed infographics, tables, and visual aids to map out these metabolic pathways for the general reader.
Visual accessibility is just a critical component when you're proposing a paradigm shift of this magnitude.
Totally.
I mean, you're asking someone to fundamentally alter how they view their health. You're asking them to shift their focus from the macro symptoms they can actually feel to these microscopic cellular engines they cannot see. That requires providing a very clear map.
And the infographics really demystify the complex biochemistry of, the electron transport chain and cellular metabolism.
They make the invisible completely visible.
We started this deep dive by talking about how much we rely on the certainty of an X-ray to show us, the jagged white line of a broken bone.
Right.
Gabriel Iqbal's Encyclopedia is essentially attempting to draw a high-definition X-ray of human metabolism.
That's a great summary. The core takeaway from this text is that achieving holistic well-being in the modern era requires looking way past the surface.
Because if you are struggling with systemic, continuous issues, relying solely on traditional symptomatic management might just leave you perpetually fighting the exact same battle.
The encyclopedia argues that true lasting resilience requires inspecting that microscopic foundation, actively balancing your cellular pH, fiercely protecting your ATP production, and thoroughly investigating overlooked biological burdens.
Like the chronic inflammation or those hidden parasitic loads we discussed.
Exactly. It's a radical perspective shift.
It asks us to stop staring at the rusted hood of the car and to start meticulously inspecting the spark plugs and the engine block. Well, as we conclude this deep dive into the illustrated encyclopedia of mitochondrial health and human well-being, there is one final lingering concept from Gabriel Iqbal's framework for you to mull over.
Also.
If the structural health of our microscopic mitochondria truly dictates the fate and longevity of our entire body,
Yeah.
are our daily lifestyle and diet choices actually just a series of micromanagement decisions for trillions of tiny, ancient cellular power plants?
If you are interested in learning more about Gabriel Iqbal's work, Gabriel Iqbal's books, The Book of Wellbeing and Heart Intelligence, for, related insights. You can check out his website at www.gabrieliqbal.com. Good resource. So thanks for joining us for this definitely thought-provoking deep dive. Here's something to mull over. Consider how focusing on the very building blocks of your health, your cells, could represent a whole new way of thinking about staying well. It's definitely food for thought.
Borrowed knowledge from institutionalized dogma is no knowledge at all. Get down to it and create knowledge experientially. Gabriel Iqbal.